Hello again, everyone. Good evening, good afternoon, good morning, maybe for some of us, who knows these days. I know you've probably heard a million times over the past couple of weeks, but we are living a unique situation. But I do like to look at the positive and how privileged are we to be able to live this in a time where technology is enabling us to still stay connected with our loved ones, to work, to learn, to grow. So I just wanted to put that out there. My name is Bianca. On my day-to-day, I work at Vistaprint where I do product design strategy, but I also volunteer for PWN within corporate partnerships. For those of you who haven't heard of PWN, we're a nonprofit organization. We promote and accelerate diverse and gender-balanced leadership, and we do this through a series of events, workshops, seminars, webinars these days, also through our excellent mentorship program and entrepreneurship programs, and also through building a powerful community and networking, because at the end, this is one of the key things to actually achieving change. The event today is going to deal with two very hot topics for Barcelona, for PWN, I think for the world: technology and diversity. The format and how everything will flow today. I'm going to be the host. We're going to have a very special guest. We're going to have a conversation for about 20 to 30 minutes. We've had some pre-submitted questions. After that, we will open a Q&A for another 20 to 30 minutes, probably. One thing I wanted to say, I encourage you to post your questions, your notes, your insights, everything you'd like us to touch upon. We are able to see your comments come in live. Even if we're not going to respond immediately to them, we will get to them in the Q&A section. At the end, we're doing this so that everyone can learn. So do ask your question and everything. I would do like a very quick introduction of our guest, just because I would like to give her the opportunity to say. So my guest today is Adelina. She's currently the Vice President at Holded, a fast-growing tech company. With that being said, good evening, Adelina. Thank you so much for joining me today. How are you doing?
Hi, Bianca. Thanks for inviting me to this. Pleasure to have this chat on this topic. I'm from sunny Barcelona. Thanks for the introduction as well. To add a few more details that might be useful for all the stories we'll share forward is I've been in the tech industry for almost all my career. I've been in tech startups, to be more precise, usually software. I've been with software, I also mean like lots of hot industries that you'd think now they are like super tech, like artificial intelligence as well, and anything like this. And I've been across different continents in different countries. Like I worked in Romania, where I'm originally from. I worked in Belgium. I worked in Germany. I worked in Portugal, in Spain now, but also in Asia, in Singapore. And it's been quite a journey. I got to see quite a lot of different facets of, how technology and the people behind it are blending.
Thank you so much. That's very interesting, and I think it's going to be very interesting for our audience to get all those different perspectives. I really wanted to kick this conversation with what may seem like a basic question, but it's not that basic, and I think it's very interesting. What made you get into tech? Was it your decision? You've always wanted to do that, or was it a key moment, a key person that influenced your journey? And what were your initial thoughts?
I would say it has been both nature and nurture. In terms of nature, I'm definitely an early adopter. Like I'm always attracted by, what's new, how is it working, what do I see the future of it potentially, and things like this. So I've always had this curiosity inside me, and the tech industry is like just awesome for that, right? Like the next new gadget or the next new software or anything like that. And the nurture part, I would attribute it to my father, actually. I used to grow up, thanks to him, with a lot of very interesting tech around. Like, anything from lights that turn on because you clap your hands and it's something he's built himself, all the way to having computer early on and internet early on when it was still not so spread, and building our own computers with different pieces. Needless to say, he's in the electronics industry. And I've seen, like, I guess what my father showed me was that it's not just things that you buy, but how they are built. So that's what he always has exposed me to, like seeing everything from the microchips and so on. And I guess that just stuck. And after I studied, and actually studied marketing, which is also like quite on the tech side lately, I just got into this world of entrepreneurship, and I liked a lot as well the whole world of tech entrepreneurship seemed to be like a world that moves really fast, and that's also like something I really loved.
Very, very, very interesting. Thank you so much for sharing. You said something and you talked a bit about your dad, your conversation, and I couldn't help but wonder, was this idea of tech and how things are built because you were surrounded by boys or men at the time? Or not? I don't know. I couldn't help but wonder.
It could be. I mean, I can rewind it back to my childhood, and I was playing more with cars with boys and fixing the cars of my cousins and stuff. I would admit that in general it was like male role models, and I'm hoping that, you know, technology has become so much more accessible and friendly with time, like over these decades, that it is attracting more and more women. And I think that's a good thing, because before, like, as I said, we come from like the microchips day and like more bulkier kind of gadgets and stuff like that. So it's definitely improving in this sense. And I think I wrote an article at some point when I wrote my book about how to reach product market fit. And I was saying, like, tech is now actually sexy. And it is an exciting place to be. It is all about design and friendliness and so on. And I guess the whole point of tonight will be to discuss about, okay, it's getting better, but what is there to do to improve diversity even further?
That's actually a very good segue into my next question, because I was going to ask, what's your current view on the diversity in tech sector? I know this has been debated and talked about for a while, and people are trying to build like special tools, are trying to change that. But what's your view? And also, are we missing anything? What's happening? What's good? Have we made any progress? Where do you think we should still work a bit? And curious.
Yeah, so I guess generally, like, let's start from the users of tech. And the users of tech are diverse. It's all genders, all ages, or cultures, and so on. And then you can wonder, like, okay, is the technology itself allowing us to have that diversity? And I would say it's still a matter of the people that use it and the biases that we have. And even forward, and this is what I would like to emphasize a lot this evening, it's the people that build technology. Are we diverse enough in these teams? And can we improve over there? And let me tell you a few stories. So, for example, in this artificial intelligence company I was back in Singapore, we actually wrote an article about female engineers. We used to have much more than the industry average, although don't get me wrong, it's still majority men, but it was better. And we actually wrote an article in the press about how did they get into this space, what was their motivation, and what was the motivation of some of their colleagues that probably studied the same things, but you don't really see them around tech startups, and they chose other kinds of careers. And it just seemed to be a lot about preconceptions. So, you know, people thinking themselves like, oh, I'm not going to go into this industry because, you know, it's more male dominated, or that's more suitable for a woman, or like anything like that. And to be honest, all I've noticed throughout all my career in all the companies where I've been in tech is that it's not that the companies discriminate in any way. It's actually the applications that we received are more tending to be of certain common types. So it's more like the people are not coming in a diverse way. And there's usually in tech industries, you would have young male predominant people. But as I said, that's because like I really wonder, like whenever I receive CVs for an open job, where are most of the women? And that's like my main encouragement tonight, like kind of like removing all the curtains and saying like, you know, it's all fine, it's cool, and if we really want to have technology that enables us and accepts diversity of opinions and backgrounds and everything, we need to be diverse in the teams that are building all this. Even more so if now we're just discussing about tools like Zoom or social media like Facebook, but we are just a few years away from having like some very powerful artificial intelligence, and that will be impacting our lives quite a lot, to say the least. And we have to really be careful on how we build it. And especially as artificial intelligence kind of has to mimic the human mind, we really need to understand our own biases. And I actually want to share like two of these biases on a fun side. There was a company where a developer actually put a rule on Slack. If anyone messages sentences starting with, you know, the typical "hey guys" whatever, which doesn't really necessarily mean that the group you're referring to is just men, you would receive an auto reply from Slack saying, "this is a bit awkward, try to use people," or whatever. So that was on a fun side. Maybe on a less fun side, I've been in situations where I would even hear a woman in a leadership role speaking about another leadership role that we're opening and refer to the person that will eventually fill it in as he. And I actually reacted like, really? Especially coming from you as a woman, you would think it's a he. And that's the thing. It's like the biases that we have in us that kind of maybe sometimes hold us back from certain areas.
True. Sorry, can you hear me? Yes.
Yeah.
So true, because someone brought this up to me, and I realized that being what I call myself, a feminist and a lady, I used to say, "Hey guys," when there are like women around. I used to call girls sometimes, which like it's not very nice because you wouldn't call men boys; you would call them men most of the time.
Yeah.
That's a really good point and interesting. But one thing I wanted to explore more, like the idea of like, yeah, we have these teams that are building these tools that are supposed to solve the problems like of everyone or of diverse communities, but those teams are not really that diverse. Obviously, that's a gap. And you're saying on one side we don't get the candidates, right? We don't get the diverse profiles. So is it where do we go? Is it a matter of like starting pushing forward more diverse role models, both in terms of like gender, geography, age, whatever, or do we go back to like education? Do you have an idea? Also, I was thinking, because you've had experience across continents and countries, have you noticed anything that was like different or interesting, or something that a specific company was doing well to target?
Yeah. Let me start with the last part on the different locations where I've been. For example, I noticed that in Singapore, there was no bias towards age, much more than in Europe. Maybe because the country itself is young, maybe because it's attracting people that really need to do innovative stuff, so they understand that predominantly you would work with younger people. And that was great because then you can feel that, you know, there's nothing stopping you. Here in Barcelona, I think it's quite culturally diverse. And maybe it's because, you know, Barcelona, it's attracting in general more people to visit. It's a very hot place. So there is like something about the culture of the place itself and what is usually attracting or trying to build that reflects all the way to the micro, to the companies and so on. So each place has its own colors, so to say. And then like, what can we do? I'm noticing a lot of changes that will probably take a while to kick in. So for example, I have two small kids, and I'm already noticing that everything like from bednight stories to cartoons to anything, it's starting to show much more diverse context, much more diverse backgrounds, much more diverse kind of people. And I think that will help eventually. Like the next generation will probably be already in a very good place from this perspective. And then in terms of just ourselves, like what can we do this year? I guess it's just, let me put it this way, with all this confinement and everything, I'm hoping that everyone got a bit more in touch with their own inner perceptions and everything. Like I heard more friends talking about meditation, mindfulness, and all these things. I would start from, let's look inside us and see what are the biases that we have within us, what's holding us back, why do we have some preconceived opinions that certain places are for certain people or whatnot, and so on. So generally, there is anyway this trend of meditation, and I would just say, like, just be aware. That awareness will help quite a lot. And then role models, I would say that's another big one. So, organizations like PWN, chat like this, I really hope it helps. And that's the other thing. It's like, let's have it more public that, there are people that are doing different things in different places that you probably haven't really considered before. So it's kind of like opening horizons and things like that.
Thank you. You've mentioned the current situation. Of course, we cannot avoid the elephant in the room. We are
yeah.
Show must go on. So most of us, or some of us, continue to work. I'm curious to hear what has hold a change, or what have you changed in your work ever since the confinement started? Maybe like directly linked to like diversity, the hiring, the onboarding, the processes. What were the challenges you had to like go through, and a bit of that?
Yeah, so there were lots of changes in the business, and we tried to kind of start with principles and predict what's going to happen as much as possible, based on previous situations, data, or opinions from influential people, and so on. It seems like we got it a bit right in the first place, because I remember we said initially, we believe businesses will be mostly closed until June, so here we are. But on the people side, well, definitely it was like really good to have all this technology at hand, right? So anything from Slack and all the tools to do marketing or what you need in product and so on. We wouldn't have been able to continue working without all these tools. So it's just, first of all, being grateful for that. But then, like, we try to not kind of like being in a bit of denial that just because we work from home, it doesn't mean that we should do things differently with regards to people. So we continued hiring, we continued onboarding people that, we've only seen through Zoom so far. And, it's been quite all right. Of course, the psychology is different, but I think just because everyone gets it, and I was saying this in another speech, like we're all in this, so we're all wearing the same shoes. I think it wasn't awkward for anyone, because it's like what you expect, and everyone is working remotely. Probably if you are like the only one away, it's a bit different. And this opened up possibilities as well, because if until now we were only hiring people that were in Barcelona and want to come to this office and whatnot, now we're more open to have people from different places. So, of course, like in the team, we're already starting to have more culturally diverse group. Like we had more and more nationalities as the latest hires. But now, because we're not looking only within Barcelona, so it can be based in any other place, that just opens possibilities. At the same time, it can get a bit tricky, because especially when you hire someone and it's a bit more challenging remotely. The first things you pay attention to when you hire someone in the probation period, it's culture fit, and it's something that it's very important, especially for a small team as a startup. And we had some difficulties over there, and makes you wonder like how well you're doing your best or you're assessing in this situation. So that's like a bit more tricky. But regardless, I think good skills to have for moving forward. And as I said, it just opened more possibilities for having more diversity in the team.
Thank you so much. Before we go to the next question, I just wanted to let people know I am seeing some questions come in. Some of them we have covered, some of them not, and we will get to them soon. Just wanted to go that out in case people were wondering. You've mentioned you were hiring the culture fit, some problematic or issues. Do you have any good stories for us to share? And also, I'm thinking on one side, you want to expand, right? And then like be diverse and then do those things. Also, you want to balance the culture fit. Anything on that end or?
So our people team has actually come up with like useful things to do during this confinement, sending us all sorts of like, here are some courses that might interest you. Here are some activities that you can do from home and so on. So that was quite appreciated. And then in terms of trying to make it work from this cultural perspective, so as I said, we hired people that we onboarded like this. We even fired people during this period. It's a bit different, but still, as I said, I think this is like something that it's a good skill to have for the future. And now everyone is just, we have to build on it. And then what was the beginning of your question? Sorry.
I actually like, because you mentioned like hiring and firing, were those decisions because of the time that we live in particularly more sensitive and more important and more difficult to take or not? From a, let's call it PR perspective, team perspective, world perspective.
Well, this kind of decisions, like, you know, who joins the team or who leaves the team are always serious. So I don't think it changes the decision-making process, but it might change the possibilities for people to bond in general and to do anything. And that's why I'm saying, like, we've been really trying as a company, like the people team, to organize all sorts of activities to really make it work. Like, kind of like not forget you're human. So it's great that, you know, we have all these technologies, like we can see each other, we can speak anytime and so on, but let's not forget that there is a certain way to build a bond. And I mean, luckily now we even have video calls, which makes it a bit more personal, but, you know, just sending messages is probably not enough and can be interpreted in different ways. But yeah, generally, interesting time indeed. And I think all this context, as I said, have made people be a bit more empathic and more aware of themselves as well. So back to the point of like, how can we increase diversity in teams? I think this, if anything, would help. And as I said, it goes mostly from people to start going into situations where they haven't been before. So for example, age groups or gender groups or whatever into tech industry, where we are saying that we need more. And in terms of applications, we need more diversity of like the profiles that are coming through.
Do you think that, so ever since you've like opened the geographical borders a bit with the hirings, maybe because of this situation, and also because this type of situation has pushed us to think a bit out of the box, have you noticed differences in the profile of the candidates that apply? Because we talked before in the beginning of the discussion, like being a bit of like young men, mostly like oriented. Do you see like more diversity in the profiles? Do you have like more to choose from? Or
actually, an interesting program we opened during this confinement was we are testing now which markets to scale into next year. So now we want to do some market assessments and experiments. And we actually opened this internship program with students from masters or MBAs, where we're looking for people that come from specific countries, so they're natives. In certain countries, it matters if you're like truly native speaking the language, or at least you know the culture and you're connected there. So it was very easy for us to find like amazing profiles for this, and we got almost 10 people from 10 different countries to do this over the next 6 months. And I actually wonder if this would have been in any other context, if it would have worked in the same way, just because now we got more open to have people in different locations and work remotely and anything like this. So that was on an interesting front. Other than that, yeah,
I
in terms of applications that we're receiving, I can't say I notice much diversity. So I don't know. It takes a while, but I think this is more like a pool also in a sense, right? So the more diverse we become in the team, the more we'll attract different people and so on.
Yes. I was looking at the time, and we're coming like close to the ending of the discussion, but I wanted also, because your answer falls like nicely, I want to talk a bit about the future and how do you see it and the impact and how are we going to come out of this, the lessons we've learned, and if you have anything that you see, like a bit of like your vision.
Are you referring to the Corona situation or?
I think both. One, like the Corona, how has the situation taught us? And then also like your general vision of future and the direction you would like to see and the necessary steps or the things that we can do, you can do personally to get there.
Yes. So one thing as I said, I'm seeing as a good outcome of the amazing 2020 spring was a bit more self-awareness from people and a bit more empathy. And I think that helps in general with diversity, with leadership, with everything. So I'm actually planning to write a book now on 360 leadership, on being a leader, not acting as a leader, which actually will involve a lot of things about knowing your body, knowing how your mind works, and all these things. Much more than tips on like how to deal with the situation, which is like very neocortex thing. So this is one, and I'm seeing a lot of potentially positive outcomes out of this. Of course, like we've been through this change just for like 2-3 months, so it's a matter of maintaining it now. But they say that you build a habit in 30, at most 90 days. So we had the right amount of time for that. And then everyone learned to work remotely. Until now, I was seeing companies that are saying, we work remotely, and that was a selling point, or other companies saying maybe we don't know how to work remotely, or people didn't know if they want a job in a remote situation. So now everyone has been through it. Rather we want to keep it or not, but at least we have the experience. And then in terms of increasing diversity in general, as I said, I think we have this, like the way our kids are growing up now, it's definitely in a good place. And then for us, and in case we don't read any more bedtime stories, it's more for there's also this increase in like events like this and more videos and people sharing stuff. So I think as people opened up more, and I encourage everyone, if you have any stories to share as well, to do it. I think there's much more transparency overall, and it starts with exactly calls like this, where you might just hear about more and more context that might attract you, and you start exploring. And then specifically for the technology, where, like, as I said, most of my career I've been in the tech industry, and I'll probably be till the end of life. And especially with the works on AI now, it's much better if we are more diverse. And by diverse, I really mean anything, because you just need the diversity of background. So it can be your education, it can be like, how you grew up, your culture, everything. And that will matter a lot. And with that also comes this part that I said we're taking now from living in the confinement, which was going a bit more into self-awareness, because again, for AI, what's important is to understand how the mind works and be conscious of any biases, patterns that you might want to change or anything like that. So this will be quite important. I think for me, the future is definitely very positive. This doesn't mean things are going to be easy. And we can always have surprises like we had this year. But in the end, everything is for the better. So I remember when I was in university and there was the finance teacher talking about economic crisis. My main memory of what he said was, as tough as it might be a crisis, it's just sorting things out, as in you get the best ones, like kind of like survival of the fittest, right? Like you adapt and you have to improve and become better. And what's not working gets removed, and then those people kind of reinvent themselves, and there we go again. It's ultimately just progress.
Honestly, I could chat with you forever. I think it would be good now to go into some questions because we've touched upon a lot of topics and I've seen quite a few questions. We've answered some, as I said. So Stephanie Galavodas, I hope I'm not murdering any names. I'll do my best. What do you think is a bigger challenge for women in tech? Establishing boundaries in the workplace or maintaining a healthy work-life balance?
Look, I'll be very honest. It sometimes feels awkward to be the only woman in the room because it's leadership meeting or very tech topic or anything like that. But as I said, this is just because the women are not coming there, so to say. Like we have very few people usually around these things. But when you are minority, then it is a bit awkward. But I think also, it's about you learning how to be fine with this, in the sense of like it's becoming the new normal. And then also as a woman, like there is more like fine tuning with this, like self-awareness. There are things that you can bring to the table, and I would say definitely don't try to be just fitting in. Remember, you are there to represent diversity. So do bring your strengths, do bring your different perspectives if there are anything like that. So remember, you are there to complement. And again, this is not necessarily about gender, right? It can be anything: your culture, your education, your perception of life, anything. And then I guess the second question was maintaining work-life balance. I don't know. I've seen a lot of dads as well, so not much of a difference there. And also maybe I'm on a typical example because I even went back to work after I only took one month maternity leave, because for me I just want to be in my element, and if that's something I'm fine with, like I'll just do it.
Completely agree. And as a personal curiosity related to that question, like the first question more, do you, not always, but often speak your mind, even when you felt like a bit out of place? Do you think that it's also about educating, because some of these people, like the men or the other, don't know? I've heard one comment in a previous PWN event, which resonated a lot with me. One of the speakers said something about, we cannot control people's thoughts and initial reactions and what they think, but we can control how we react to the situation, what we say and act upon.
Let me make a very clear difference there. We control how we react. It's massively true, and just general psychology is very healthy to do so. So like, not expect others to change. It's like how you react to things. But how we act, I would say it's a whole different story. And that's why I said, don't forget that you are at the table to bring that diversity, if that's the case. So don't try to blend in or mimic anything if that's not you. Very straightforward. And ultimately, what everyone appreciates is authenticity. And that's how you build the trust, and that's how you build everything. That's all I would encourage everyone to say.
Thank you. So another question from Angela: how do you encourage the growth of women within your own organization? It is less likely for women to raise their hands for a promotion until they meet all the requirements.
Probably it helps just to see that I am in senior leadership, and that is an example for others, and it's, you know, saying it's possible. I would say I help equally men and women in my teams around, you know, just finding their voice and their exact place where they would contribute the best for the business while playing to their own strengths. I have this massive thing of like, play to your strengths, not to say not to improve on your weaknesses, but don't obsess over that. Just like find what are the contexts where you would be better playing on your strengths. So I wouldn't say like I do anything specifically for women. But I did notice in various contexts that just because, you know, I'm in a senior leadership position, some women would come to me and ask questions, and I'm always more than happy to help them, you know, advice on how to get promoted in certain situations, like people that are not in my team, but would just want advice or things like that. And actually, in my own team, we just promoted a woman now. So yeah.
And on that, how do you suggest or to women to make that initial step to open the conversation? I think often we might be not scared is not the right word, but we might feel a bit like reluctant. That like some people may seem unapproachable. Do you have any tip on like opening up the conversation?
Look, from an employer perspective, because I've seen many CVs and people in interviews and things like that, I do have to say that research that's quite popular now around, you know, a woman won't really go for it unless she thinks she's like perfectly qualified, while a man not necessarily. That's really true. But depending on the role you're hiring for, you're looking for different things, right? So in some cases, you will look for the self-confidence. In some cases, you look for some technical knowledge, or both, or anything like that. So ultimately, it is what it is. So for example, I would never bias my decisions just to increase diversity. Like, I'm sorry, of course, like we want the best people. So that's why I'm saying, like, to have this diversity, it comes from the people that are applying, not from the employees. So employers, like, we want to have the best, and I'm not seeing biases in like companies where I've been. It's just this people to actually come through the door to in this example that I've been given, like as a woman, you know, if you are confident that you really like that company, that role, and you can do a good job, then go for it. Like, even if you're missing one of the bullet points on the CV, do present like why you are the best for it.
People who are hiring are the same profile all over and over again. Wouldn't they have the same biases, even if the candidates would be like diverse? Should we tackle that? I wonder.
As I said, more self-awareness on both sides, I guess. And ultimately, like, even if we are through this generation where we would say, like, you know, like maybe we don't have enough role models, maybe we don't have 50-50 gender equality in companies or whatever, just, as I said, focus on like survival of the fittest. Like, why are you of the best value? Like, really polish your skills, or build the self-confidence, or whatever it takes.
Thank you. We have another question from Annie. Have you personally experienced discrimination in your career? Assuming yes, how did you deal with it? Did you find it more prevalent earlier in your career, or as you got to more senior levels?
Not really. That's why I'm saying, in my experience, it wasn't like companies discriminate, or they do want a specific type of people. Although in general, like, it's normal that we have this bias, I forgot how it's called, to like more people like you. But I've seen this more in terms of values and ways of being, rather than diversity of cultures or genders or anything like that. And for that, I would say ultimately it actually works, because what do you want? You want culture fits, right? So there are certain ways of behaving that companies prefer, and those people will get along. As I said, I did find it awkward in the beginning to be the only woman in the room, but it's just I realize it's in my own mind, and there's nothing out of that. And yeah.
Have you heard to that? Like, have you heard, I don't know, labels or putting in a box, or maybe if you were the only woman, I mean, then organizing maybe men's getaways or gentlemen's clubs that they used to call them, and maybe not being part of them. Or have you ever experienced that? And how did you try to break it?
Again, maybe I'm not the best example to ask in this case, because normally I would be, like going for drinks or anything in this sense. So I never felt like I'm just excluded because we would do different things. And honestly, like I've seen all sorts of like lately there's like much more when it comes to team buildings or whatnot. There is a lot of things that are happening that are very explorative. So it's not necessarily like traditional things where, it's like it used to be like one kind of like again gender or culture or anything like that. But all in all, I would say, look, from everything I've seen so far, I don't think companies are discriminating. That's not to say that probably there are examples out there. But what I've seen is more like this part of like not enough diverse people coming through the door. So that's what I'm encouraging here. And, for a while, if until we get this diversity fixed, you might be a minority of any of the categories. So again, my encouragement there is like be yourself and don't try to fit in and be who you're not, because the whole point is to bring the diversity to the table. And yeah, ultimately we'll get there.
Thank you. We don't have other questions from the chat. I did have maybe another. So the topic of mentorship, again, is one of the hot topics nowadays. Do you encourage people to go for mentors, ask for mentorship? And do you have any tip on how should they choose their mentors? I personally think it is very important to choose a mentor, to have a mentor, someone to, like a role model.
Yes. I did have mentors throughout my career. Mentors and coaches, they're quite different things. Actually, like that's a good point. For mentors, I actually chose only women in leadership, and that was just because I really think that there is a certain nuance to types of leadership just based on this, and I wanted to find like my voice and not try to try to have examples of certain things that I don't think I am. And then this being said, like I chose some really powerful women that, had the kind of leadership that I really like. So a very strong voice, very authoritative, yet caring, but not, as I said, in a very powerful way. So those were like examples I resonated with, and I just asked them if they'll be happy to be my mentors, and it worked really well. And I really encourage everyone to have mentors. One example, one advice I would give on that, on how to get a mentor, is to actually be very specific on when approaching the person, to say what exactly would you like and why from that person, because everyone is busy. Like just saying like, hey, can you be my mentor, is just it's too open. So go for specific people with specific things, like, hey, I really like this about you, this resonates with me, it's something I want to improve on, can you have some chats with me?
Thank you so much. Even like selfishly and personally, that's very valuable advice for me. To wrap up things, I just wanted, this was so enjoyable and nice. Thank you so much. And there were a few key things that at least I will take out of this conversation. One was companies, technology, they don't discriminate. We discriminate because we have our own biases, and we should think more about that. That was super interesting. The mentorship piece as well. Also, the fact that don't doubt yourself, don't question yourself. If you got there, it is for a reason. You have a seat at the table, act as such.
Exactly.
Very empowering and very good to hear, honestly, very important. Again, I want to thank you so much. And I want to thank everyone who watched us, asked questions. I also want to let people know that we're going to have another event in June. PWN will have another event, TBD for details for that. Any final thoughts?
I don't know. It's been a great conversation, and I really hope that that helps. And ultimately, as I said, I think it's really great to have this kind of open chats and have more people aware of biases, aware of things like this, and to understand that it's to the point of what you said, right? It's like how you react to things. The power is in you to to go to wherever you want and be whoever you want. So there is no place where you're not accepted, or there is no place where you're not good enough, or anything like that. It's just let's make it happen.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. That's a great note to end the webinar interview today. Have a lovely evening, I think, by now. And until next time. Bye.
Right. Have a good evening, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.